I'm Philippa Fabry. Welcome to the Show Your Superpower series. Conversations with engineers, entrepreneurs, creatives, founders, scientists, thought leaders, disruptors, and warriors. Here to provide insight into what differently able children can become, given the right environment, teachers, and parenting. Because just asking the right questions and listening to what our children need can turn real challenges into superpowers that can change their world. Here we go. Good evening, everybody. Wednesday, 16th of June, and it is Youth Day. And what an amazing opportunity for us to be chatting about dyslexia and our beautiful, beautiful children and their superpowers. Tonight, I'm joined by Darren Clark. He's a dyslexia advocate and influencer, and we're going to be chatting about his journey through schooling and as he found his superpower in the world. And this is an opportunity, guys, to really try and pull your children into this conversation. We're speaking to the young people today. If you have a child or a family member who is struggling with reading and spelling and writing, and we're wanting to speak to you. Parents, we're speaking to you. You have the opportunity to bring out your child's superpower. You just need to know where to find it. My name is Philippa Fabry, and tonight we are demystifying the diagnosis. We are looking at trying to find the true potential, the gifts, the talents, the amazing gifts that our children have been born with. As an education consultant, I've been in this game for 25 odd years. I've walked this journey as a parent. I'm walking this journey as an education consultant. I founded a school in Port Elizabeth 16 years ago called Elson Academy, and we are walking the talk about learning barriers, learning challenges, and providing the opportunities for our children to shine, not to survive, but to shine. So when you look up the word superpower in the dictionary, I'm going to read what it says. It refers to a person's particular genius. It is the specific, unique, and specialized skill that they possess. So if I had to ask you what your superpower is, do you have a superpower? Do you know what your superpower is? Have you discovered it yet? Let's just think about that for a while. What is your superpower? Are you using your superpower in your business, in your whatever you're doing as an adult, whatever problem you are solving? I always say, not what you do, but what problem are you trying to solve? So let me know where you're watching from. This is an interactive discussion. Tell me where you're watching from. If you have a child, let me know what grade. Maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a parent. We're speaking to you. We're joined live by Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Some of us have joined through LinkedIn, but I want to introduce my guest, that we actually bumped into each other in a room in Clubhouse. I'm not too sure how many of you have discovered Clubhouse yet. It was only for Apple users, but it is now for Android users as well. And if you haven't been invited to Clubhouse, try and get yourself an invite. It's the most amazing platform for meeting new people. So Darren, I'm going to bring you up onto stage. Hello.
Hello. Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
Yeah, we can hear you, we can see you, and we are, I'm looking at that map behind you, and we discussed that you are in Bristol, up in the UK. What's the weather like in where you are?
We're really blessed at the moment. Yeah.
I see.
Going through some kind of heat wave at the moment. We're incredibly blessed with the with the weather, which is very surreal in the UK. But
really?
I've been told we've got rain tomorrow, so we'll probably be back to the weather, but gorgeous.
Okay, it looks like you. Yeah, I can see you. You're looking summery. Unlike me with my long sleeve shirt and.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get down to business. So there's some people watching us. Katie Mill watching from Port Elizabeth. She's a teacher. We've got Marcel Sharp. Hello, welcome. Hi, Miss Marcel, and I saw Maurice, I hope I'm saying your name right. Welcome. We are chatting about dyslexia this evening, and the I suppose the superpower that might come out of having a a different ability. We don't call it a disability, we call it a different ability. So Darren, just in a nutshell, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I have dyslexia and ADHD. But I found out very late on in life, at the age of 36. So I'm 44 now, so I'm still trying to understand and find my own way around dyslexia and my own ADHD kind of diagnosis. So it's still very new to me in that sense. I guess at 36 that was quite a late diagnosis, but yeah. So my kind of role in the job that I do now is I kind of work with organisations and the educational sector to kind of make it more neurodiversity kind of awareness and friendly. And it's something that I've been working on for the past about 4 years, really, on kind of a global stage.
How did you get into that, say 4 years ago? What was the deciding factor?
Yeah, so I kind of I've always kind of I've been running my own businesses for about 12 years, and when I always worked in the kind of the educational sector, in the sense of I wanted to give back. So I wanted to start speaking at schools. It was more kind of entrepreneurship, business, and I did kind of assembly talks. To talk to the kind of the whole school, and then I would speak to kind of small groups, and I ended up speaking to about 80,000 students over a period of 6 years. And this was secondary school. So in the UK, call it the secondary school. I've done the infant school, primary school, youth projects, anything that kind of helped bring more awareness around kind of the dyslexia, ADHD, neurodiversity. But it was like I said, it was more business to start off with, and then once I found out my own kind of diagnosis, I then kind of started to share my own story of maybe some of the struggles I've had and some of the successes. And how I got into it was purely I researched around dyslexia. I was Googling, trying to kind of absorb and understand it, and I literally put an email together to 76 different organizations to do with the IDA, so the International Dyslexia Association. And because I wanted to kind of contact organizations that kind of knew a little bit about dyslexia. And I just put my partner helped me put an email campaign together, put it out, and everything kind of snowballed from them. From putting that email out, I got in touch with a school in Kenya and Malawi in America. So it kind of, I know I'm kind of fast forwarding now, but how I got into it is really just kind of reaching out and asking people if I can help and support. But in return, I was learning from them as well.
Wow. So we'll get into that, because that is very interesting in terms of how you were received. So how the schools sort of responded to your reaching out to them. But take us back to the 10-year-old Darren Clark sitting in a classroom in a school somewhere. What was life like for you then?
Absolutely. So I guess it was just a child that was always a dreamer, always kind of feeling like I just didn't fit in to the kind of the establishment of the world that I was kind of in. I was always dreaming, always innovating, always thinking differently, I felt, to my peers. So primary school, so my first school from up until I went to secondary school, I think it was 11 or 12 years old. That was kind of I look back on it in a kind of a joyous way, because there wasn't a massive amount of pressure in my first school, because it wasn't loads of exams. They weren't really kind of testing me. But when I went up to the big school, so to speak, the secondary school, that's when the unknown kind of dyslexia and the ADHD really was kind of tested to the max. And because I was tested so many times in the sense of, what class you should go in and your exam results and everything else. Subsequently, at the time, they didn't really understand what dyslexia was. And of course, so there was no diagnosis, and there was no teacher that can kind of help and support. So they would literally just put me in this thing called the unit, which was an old kind of porter cabin in the middle of a school playing field. And that's more or less where I spent 5 years of my education, with substitute teachers, just kind of doing colouring in books, anything that would keep me kind of occupied. I was allowed to sit, I was allowed to go to drama. I was allowed to do physical education, so PE, and art. So those were the kind of the three lessons that I was able to go. When they asked me to go, when I tried to go to math, English, humanities, science, I'd go, but because I found the lessons very challenging, they would then pull me out and put me back into the classroom, so to speak, which wasn't really a classroom.
Okay, so
you're a bit lost.
So was that affecting all subjects then, not just your language? It was affecting math, it was affecting social science, it was affecting everything. Were you struggling in terms of concentration, behavior?
Yeah. So I wasn't. So I, funny enough, even though I was, separated from my friends, which is very difficult in school, you just want to kind of fit in and just kind of go, under the radar, so to speak, and not be, to stand out. But it was very difficult because I would go to these lessons and, words were, for me, I understand with dyslexia, it's on a spectrum, so everyone is different. But for me, I had the visual stress of dyslexia, so words would move around on the screen, and I would just feel, kind of at a real loss. And when I'm trying to explain it to people back then, I mean, we're talking school in sort of the 1980s, 1990s, which didn't really have the grasp of neurodiversity and dyslexia as they do now. So I did feel it affected the social side of me, the confidence. There were so many elements, and it was almost difficult because I was allowed to sit some lessons and not others. So when you were put back into one of the lessons with all of your friends, you did feel a little bit less confident because they're thinking, well, he's back, and then you get pulled back out and put into another classroom, so to speak.
And your parents, were they called in for discussions? I mean, was there some kind of a collaboration between the teachers and your parents?
Yeah, I think my parents absolutely, loved them to pieces, and I guess it was just a different era back then. And the school that I went to was quite a notoriously kind of a a very large school, and it was I call it the kind of the school of hard knocks, and I don't think there was. I mean, there must have been parents' evenings, and there must have been talk about it, but I kept a lot of it to myself, and that was my own decision. So I would make out that everything's kind of going well, and obviously it wasn't. But there was never this moment where they would pull my parents in and look at my grades. It was almost, looking back on it, it was almost, well, he's not really achieving this. That's fine. We've got, better things to kind of to spend our time on, sadly.
So you were pulled out and then allowed or integrated in for certain lessons. Yes. Once you then moved on to high school, then how were you accommodated there?
Yeah, so high school was the school, that the secondary school that I was kind of pulled out of these lessons. So in UK we have we call it primary school and secondary school. So primary school, you have nursery, primary. So primary goes up to, I think it's about 10 or 11, about 11, 12 years old, and then you then go into the thing called secondary school, and then that can go up to kind of 17, 18, and then college, university. So the high school, which was equivalent for us as the secondary school, was where I was taken out of lessons and put back in.
Oh wow! And then exams? How did you sit your
So I wasn't actually allowed to sit any exams. They used the terminology that it would be a waste of paper to allow me to sit the exams. So subsequently, when everyone was taking exams, I was again in a separate classroom doing colouring in or anything to kind of keep me occupied, so to speak. So yes, I left school with no qualifications because they wouldn't let me sit any exams.
How do you rise above that? I mean, without that taking its toll on your self-esteem, on your emotional well-being, how do you go forward then? So you leave school without a qualification, and then
Yeah, so it does play, and I guess, the damage that's actually done on on your confidence or your mental health, or all these kind of elements, that it doesn't never really completely go away, because there are elements that you have to kind of work on yourself. So I guess for me, I've always had this positive mindset, and whether it's dyslexia, whether it's ADHD, whether it's just me, I don't know. I tend to always try and look on, same as my parents, I always try and look on the more positive side of things. And I just knew that, I was very entrepreneurial. I still loved doing things outside of school, but so I knew once I was able to do something that someone would give me the opportunity for, that I could kind of fall in love with and start doing, then I knew I could kind of excel. But it was really tough, leaving school with not being able to read, hardly be able to read. Writing was tricky. Getting a job was difficult. I applied for 26 jobs after I left school. I was just cycling around on my BMX, so my bike, cycling around the area, going into shops, going into to banks. So I even applied to go into a funeral parlor, any shop or any business, asking if they would take me on. And subsequently, as soon as it got to the application process and you had to fill in where the grades were, I would always leave that blank, because there was no grades to put in there. My mum would help me fill in this application form. And it was this one moment, and I think this is where dyslexia thinking can think outside the box sometimes. And I always remember I was going into a food retailer, which is very big in the UK, and I had my application form. And just as I went in to do the same process I've gone in for the past 27 times into different stores, I remember looking at that box and seeing it empty. And I was thinking, well, is this what's stopping me from getting an interview? And I always remember, and I'm not condoning lying on any CV or anything else like this. I'm just saying. So for me, I remember taking that application form, sitting down on the floor in the middle of a car park, and thinking to myself, well, what grades would I have got had I had sat some exams? So I remember just filling in these exam results, not giving myself A's or B's, good grades, and I mean, and I filled it in, and I got through the door and got an interview. So I don't know whether that helped or whether that stopped, but this was for about 12 hours a week pushing trolleys in a supermarket. So it wasn't, a graduate program or apprenticeship or anything. It was a supermarket, which was great, but that was my first kind of real success, I guess.
Okay, let's look at some questions before we go on to the second part. So I'm sure you buried many issues, as it would have been easier. How did it impact on your adulthood?
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think we all kind of bury some form of issues. For me, I've been pushed. I have suppressed so many times over my life. But I actively meditate, actually speak about my feelings. I've spoken to people over the years about these things, and that helps me kind of express and get some of these things out.
There's a good question. What would be the most important thing to know about dyslexia in order to help the potential child? What's the most important thing? Because, okay, firstly, we know that it's on a spectrum. So you get mild, severe. We also know that dyslexia can affect different things. Some kids are dyslexic and they spell brilliantly, but they cannot read. Some children speak brilliantly. You think that there's no way that they could have a learning barrier because they're so eloquent, but yet they can't write as well as they can speak. So I suppose looking back, what is the common factor, that links all the different types of dyslexia together?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not a specialist in dyslexia. It's I talk of kind of personal experiences, of lived experience. But all I can kind of the schools and the education side of that I've spoken to, and the parents I've spoken to. And I think it just comes down to understanding the child and speaking to the child and understanding how they see their own kind of dyslexia. Because again, everything can kind of be different. And once you can kind of open up that conversation and know what kind of support, and I guess sometimes we don't really know what support we actually need. You know, if we went into an organization and said we had dyslexia, the first thing they would say is, yeah, you know, well, what support do you need? And it depends on how much of the journey that you are on and how much you know about things. So sometimes it's something that you can kind of just open the conversation with, and then it kind of extends. That's just, again, my personal experience.
I know back in the day they would say that dyslexia is a word blindness, so it affects the written word, whether it's you know, writing yourself, reading, spelling. It's definitely something to do with the arrangement of the letters, identifying the different sounds in the words. It's that code that doesn't make any sense. It's just like it's Greek, you know. Here's another question about differentiating between a child that could be dyslexic or if they just lack consistency when it comes to learning the phonetics and the reading. Yeah, I think consistency when it comes to learning the phonics and reading. There again, you know, if they learn for the test. Now, kids get to write spelling tests. That's how they, you know, they learn their phonics. Is they have the sounds, they have the list and the words, and then at the end of the week they write a test. But then test them those same words the next day or the next week and they're gone. They haven't established, you know, they're not banked in the brain. They just sort of learn them for that day and then it's gone. And that's, I think, where you would see that inconsistency, where they know it the one day, but they don't know it the next.
Definitely relate to that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you would agree with that.
No, I can definitely relate to that. There are certain keywords that I continuously spell incorrect. I then search. Because you think about the brain, how we learn things. If we spend so much time learning something like a musical instrument or different pattern, we should be able to theoretically be able to kind of lock it in. But you know, it's time after time after time. There's certain words that I would try and write that would just be, and I just go through the same process every single time.
Did the school authorities ever think of testing you orally?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I never knew anyone. I actually didn't really know of dyslexia until I was like 36. So it was not, the word didn't kind of exist in my kind of vocabulary, so to speak, and I didn't ever know it of it being spoken to at school. So in hindsight, it would have been amazing if I would have known someone or someone would have, there wasn't this, like, you think about schools now, there are, kind of special ed teachers and they can kind of help, children. And if a child was leaving a classroom and going off to this thing called the unit, it was because they would be labeled, and I hate the terminology, troubled children. And that's kind of the label that I was given. So subsequently, you were then put in with 7 or 8 children in a kind of in a classroom, and each one of those could be neurodiversity, could be, so many different things. But there was never really any time taken to understand how you can help that individual.
Yeah, and I think of all the sort of accommodations and the concessions that children are exposed to now that they have available now, which is amazing. And I think it's due to people becoming more aware and having this conversation and saying, listen, what is the thing that, if we had to level the playing field, what do you need so that, you're being treated the same as everybody else, to be fair? What is the one thing that you need? And if it is an oral exam, or if it is being able to have your exam written for you, where you're just talking the answers and somebody's writing it for you, I mean, it's chalk and cheese, really. But I think that is just the advantage of where we are now, 20 years down the line, where dyslexia is something that is now thrown around a lot. So we've also got to be very careful that everybody, anybody who might struggle with something, so no, well, I'm dyslexic, well, have you got an official diagnosis? No, I just, well, it again, it comes down to, is the label necessary? or is it just the fact that you struggle with certain things and you require certain accommodations? Because Darren, you say you were almost were you the daydreamy type of ADHD, not the
Yeah.
hyperactive ADHD?
So I guess a bit of both, and I know that's counterintuitive to the answer of what you're saying. So I've always been a dreamer. I've always been someone who would imagine things and see, kind of in everything in pictures. I see everything in pictures, and I always think of kind of different ways to do things. My ADHD, yes. I guess the thing that troubles me with the ADHD is the lack of trying to stop my brain from racing. And when I go to sleep at night, that trying to switch off my brain can be really, really taxing, which can then turn into burnout, which can be become very exhausting. But so it can kind of go up and down in those aspects. So and there's certain things that can trigger it. Hyperfocus.
So you have a hyperactive brain, not necessarily a hyperactive body.
Yeah. So I keep, I like to keep fit and be very active, but my mind just feels like it's running all the time. And I do meditation. The minute I can kind of get to do meditation, I know how it helps me, but to get my mindset to try and understand that I'm going to be doing meditation can be a massive fight, because it's almost like my brain saying, I don't want to slow you down. So that could be but meditation and listening to classical music, those things really kind of help. And nature as well helps kind of slow that brain down.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So when you look back, what was the thing that you would gravitate towards as a kid, where time would stop still and you would go into flow, or you'd be in your happy place, or what is the thing that you used to do as a kid?
Yeah, so I'm building things, and even now, I loved taking apart things and putting it back. Anything that can kind of focus. I love the fact of the idea of when they say living in the moment, but really living in the moment. So I would build dens, like out of wood, and take things apart and just to see how they work. And I've always been into photography, so I love taking pictures. And as a child, my dad had a really old kind of camera, which you'd have to kind of wait for it to be developed. But that moment, even now, it helps when I'm looking into an actual camera and I'm looking into the lens and I go to take that shot. That moment that I'm there, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not thinking about social media. I'm not thinking about anything. All I'm thinking about is just capturing that moment. I take a lot of pictures of amateur photographer for wildlife. So I take a certain picture where the animal is just about to do something. So it could be a bird just about to fly. It could be a squirrel just about to jump. So those, as a child, I've always been interested in living in the moment, and those photography, taking things apart, seeing how it works, it's always really interested me.
Okay, so would you say that is your superpower, is taking things apart and getting down to the nitty-gritty of how it works?
I'd say with the superpower thing, I would have to kind of say that the biggest thing for me is communication, because I struggle sometimes to actually put written communication down. I've always found speaking to people and meeting people and is really kind of connecting with people has become a superpower, because I haven't been able to do a lot of the, if I wanted to grow the businesses, then my partner would help me, with this, and she would bring, an incredible set of skills. When I was in corporate management and I was in very senior management, I'd always gravitate to around people. And what I didn't know at the time, because of undiagnosed dyslexia, is that I was finding my support group of people without looking for my support group. So I've always been like trying to connect with people and understand. And I'm a massive believer in the, that's one of my superpowers, is that I love speaking to people. I love finding out about their stories and connecting with people. And that's really helped me in the positions that I'm in, you know, my social side of my life, my business life. That's really helped.
How your interest is wonderful to hear about your interest in photography and the calming effect it has on you when involved in it.
Yeah, it's
So
not
you go out into nature and you take photos of nature and animals.
Yes, so I love anything to do with nature. So if it's sunsets, if it's anything wildlife side of it, I capture that moment, and I used to do it a lot of the time off of my phone. But what I found with my phone is that the minute I have it, I have that mindset that my phone is, because I work a lot like everyone else. I see that as a working tool. But with the camera, it's once I've got that in the hand and I'm looking through that lens, it's like time stands still, and it's just it's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's about the need to exercise patience. As an adult, you have no doubt you no doubt have trained yourself to control your brain to calm down. I suppose when you're waiting for that exact moment to take that shot, you need to wait.
Absolutely. There's no other, because I just kind of visualize. So say, for instance, if it's a bird or a duck or something, and it's in the water, and I know the pattern of how it would fly and what it would look like. So in my head, I'm visualizing, if I wait and take that picture, then the wing would be there, and then the wing would be there, and the wing would be there.
Amazing.
And then I take about 30 shots, and then within that I would capture the shot that I wanted, and I would just stand there, you know, looking at the picture, and it's euphoria. It's a feeling of, you know, feeling proud, and you know, and again, you don't get every single shot that you visualize. That's natural, but within that moment, there's no phone calls, there's no anything else. It's just and again, I train my brain to think when I going out with a camera. That's what I'm going out for an hour of kind of escapism.
Beautiful. So let's go back to obviously your first job, and you know, you said, I mean, you've won awards, you're an entrepreneur. Let's talk about some of your businesses and how you've gotten to where you are now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I left school with no qualifications. So my first job was working for a supermarket, pushing trolleys. So I was collecting the trolleys and put them back. That was 12 hours a week. So it wasn't a full-time position. And then I fell in love with retail, in the sense that because I knew there wasn't kind of exams. It was done on sort of physical kind of grafting and being able to kind of, I knew the process. So the process was, if the trolleys are over there and they need to be put back, that was quite simple for me. And so I did that. And then I kind of progressed, and I kept asking for more hours and more positions. And then I subsequently then managed to kind of work my way into the store, working on tills, working on different departments. And then kind of fast forward, really, most of my career has been in retail. I struggled getting into kind of the managerial positions early on, because again, you had to have some sort of qualifications to apply for. Even though I was doing a lot of the managerial roles, they still wouldn't give you the kind of the managerial role, because you had to sit an interview and you had to have certain qualifications. And I kind of jumped ship, and I went to a different retailer. And again, I'm not advocating lying on your CV or anything, but when I went to a different supermarket, all I said was that I was a manager at a different supermarket, and they never kind of checked that. Even though I was doing the managerial role, I wasn't officially given the title. So technically it wasn't really a lie. It was kind of just saying that. So they gave me my first managerial job at supermarket, and then it kind of excelled. So I excelled in one of the retailers. I became a store manager, and then a regional manager, and a senior manager. And I was looking after about 56 stores at one point, which was, and this was all with undiagnosed dyslexia and ADHD. So I was doing about 95 hours a week. I was traveling all over the place. The pressure that was on me was intense. But I kept getting promotion after promotion after promotion because I just kept pushing myself and pushing myself, and don't get me wrong, there was a lot of times where I didn't get the promotion, and so it wasn't just always going up. There was a lot of kind of downs and burnouts in that sense. But so I got to kind of quite a senior position in retail over the years, and then I couldn't get any further because the next roll up definitely needed some qualifications, some degrees. So I ended up kind of leaving that behind, and then I started my own business, which was a cleaning business. And at the time, a lot of people, my friends and family, they thought I was kind of going through, a midlife crisis. Yeah, I was kind of insane because I left this very well-paid, secure job.
Cushy corporate, yeah.
Doing this share scheme, holidays, and everything else like this. When I think back now, no, but it's I left that to kind of start my own business. And the thing is, I've always gone in at entry level. Within any position that I've gone in at entry level. So I knew if I put the hard work in and learned the system and learned how to do it, I could grow. So starting my own business, I knew nothing about cleaning. I just knew it was a subscription type business. If I signed a customer up on a weekly clean, and I continue to give great service, they'll continue to pay me on a weekly basis. And then it kind of, it just grew there. So so then we set up a couple of different cleaning businesses. We grew it to one of the biggest in the Southwest. We were cleaning about 1,000 homes a week on the home cleaning business. And over the years, we employed, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of members of staff, off the back of that. That's kind of a bit of a fast forwarding. That was my kind of first step into my own businesses.
Did you franchise that?
No, we didn't. It was always the goal to franchise. But I think, the first 2.5 years of that business, myself and my partner were out cleaning more or less every single day. Home cleaning, we would have our own cleaning round, and then we would get people we'd hire people, and then they would start cleaning, and then we'd have staff labor turnover, and people would leave, and then it would leave us with 15 customers that we'd have to clean for. So getting that to grow was really, really tricky. And I think we just kind of grew that, and then we grew an office cleaning business. And I think after kind of 9 years, we had managers and supervisors. I think we kind of just fell out of love with the industry and the cleaning side of it. But it was very, very successful. It was very, very hard work. I learned so much about business, about that side of it. But no, we didn't end up franchising that.
And as you say, relationships, if you're okay with communicating with people, and you love people and meeting new people, it's about you. People will buy into you, not necessarily your business. They trust you. They know, like, and trust you. And then the business obviously benefits. Has anything helped you along the way to be able to gather the information from the forms and documents you would have to work through as you progressed in your career?
Yeah, so for me, again, my partner, she's been, absolutely incredible. Half the stuff that I've done, I wouldn't be able to do without her. So that's been my, my biggest support network. There are, again, assistive technologies around, that's kind of helped as well. But yeah, I mean, generally, it's kind of the support network, and my partner, that's kind of helped around that. So I can't, I'm incredibly blessed to be able to have that.
So I was going to say, how are you with admin?
Admin's, it's not, admin and timekeeping and is not my strongest. I'll be completely honest. I have I've had diaries for years, and each year I look back on them, and most of them are empty, even though I live a very, very busy life, and there's lots of appointments and things. So the admin side has been, it's something I've struggled with.
Well, you touched on it briefly. You said you were talking about what your assistive technology, or you have you didn't use a diary, but what tools and strategies do you use today that have benefited you besides your partner? She doesn't come into this one.
No.
She's not an assistive technology.
No, definitely not. My phone has been, the lifelong for me. Again, voice recognition is a lot of the time when I'm, I take LinkedIn for instance. I tend to get now probably anything from 30 to 50 messages a day via LinkedIn, and it could be an inquiry, it could be something to do with the shows that we do or anything else like this. So it's very difficult sometimes when you're feeling quite burnt out by reading to get back to people. So I tend to reply a lot of the time with voice, whether it's a WhatsApp, LinkedIn, or anything else. So that's kind of really kind of helped me on those side of it. And again, a lot of people tend to use software. I'm a little bit kind of old school, I guess. So sometimes I tend to rebel against using these things, which is really counterintuitive to helping, because I know that it would really help me. But sometimes I can be a little bit stubborn, if I'm honest, of trying to learn a new software to kind of help me in the long run. But the diary on my phone, the reminders, voice recognition has been recording, has been absolutely imperative to everything that I do.
Dragon Speak, I think, is one that's commonly used. But it's so complex to actually understand how to use it that it often doesn't get used.
Yeah, there's Dragon. There's a thing called Claro software. There's an abundance. I mean, I'm very fortunate in what I do is that I do get a lot of companies sending me things to kind of trial and either review or to have a look at. But I guess I find it very difficult with things that are speaking to me while I'm trying to write or trying to assist, and that kind of really kind of, I don't work well with that. With that, it's almost like a dictation side of it. So yeah, but we're all different. We all do things a little bit different.
Have you heard of that scanning pen?
Yes.
It scans along the line and then it tells you what is written.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen that work. I've just heard about it.
Good friends with the founder, the co-founder of that, a gentleman called Jack Churchill, who founded the business with his business partner Toby. But yeah, they're incredibly successful business, and they've got in the educational sector and also in the workplace now. So, but yeah, I definitely they do free trials and everything else. So I'm not associated with the company in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, they are they're good technology.
Yeah. The only sad thing is that generally cell phones and those kind of tools are not really found in schools or
No.
I know we're not, if your phone is seen, it gets confiscated and you can come and collect it from the principal's office at the end of the term. But if those tools were more readily available and if teachers knew more about how to use technologies in the classroom, I think we'd be a lot further down the line. Than rather taking those sort of things away.
Yeah, I work with quite a few tech companies, and that's one of the things that I kind of help around, speaking to them about what assistive technology is out there to kind of help, to bring into the schools. And in the UK, we're very fortunate in the UK that a lot of schools are taking upon them and using some of the technology that's out there. But like you said, there are a lot more work to be done.
Thanks, Darren, for sharing your story, as I can relate so much to some of the learners I have had in my teaching experience. Let's go back. What would you say to yourself if you had to look back? What advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
Yeah, I would just telling that 10-year-old self of mine to just believe in yourself and just keep going and just don't feel ashamed. Don't feel and just keep thinking of the bigger picture and your goals. Really, it's just I do. I've written blogs about this and posts about speaking to your younger self and I think it's a very emotional time. I guess I probably speak about it not as emotional as I probably could about that kind of time. But looking back on it, it was a if you think at 10 years old, just about to go to the big school, that was that was a tough 5-6 years. That was a really tough time. So I think it's that having that self-belief and that kind of inner confidence, I guess.
Did you think that there was something, because a lot of the kids say, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Why am I so stupid? Those sort of,
Yeah. I just remember going home from school exhausted most days with migraines and headaches and really just I remember speaking out loud on the way home from school. I can remember exactly most days I'd go past and I'd say to myself, why don't I get it? I just don't get it. And I'm saying to myself, I just why don't I get it? Everyone else in the class, when I'm allowed to sit in these classrooms and everything else, teacher says something, it's up on the board, they're writing it down, it's done, and I'm just there thinking, why don't I get it? And that really kind of stemmed with me from school into the workplace. It's only kind of now that I still, I know about my own kind of diagnosis, that I can kind of give myself a little bit of a break, from it. But yeah, that's been with me for many, many years, that element of not getting it.
Do you think it's very common that adults are only finding out that they had a specific disability later on in life? I mean,
I think the oldest gentleman that I say gentleman, that's someone that connected with me via a social media channel, a gentleman who was 76 years old and listened to some of the stories that I put out, some of the posts, and actually got himself diagnosed, through some, an organization. And that's the oldest that I know of someone having a diagnosis at 76. And I guess I'm speaking to more and more people who are now getting diagnosed and understanding more about the dyslexia. And it does feel, I always remember when I was diagnosed, it was almost like, there's your diagnosis. Yes, there is some form of aftercare within that, but it was almost like a self-discovery of going, okay, so now I've got this diagnosis. What do I do with it now? And that's where I had to then kind of research myself and try and understand what that meant. And then what I found is then you start kind of having those kind of like flashback moments where you think, well, that made sense when I had burnout at the promotional meeting that I had, or I didn't get that, or I didn't do this, and all these kind of flashbacks. For me, all these flashbacks kind of happened, and they kind of, because I was very hard on myself, in the sense, because I didn't know. I always felt there was something there that maybe I wasn't clever enough, or maybe I just didn't get it, and I just needed to push even harder to kind of break through, so to speak.
It's like putting together the jigsaw puzzle of what the pieces are that makes you who you are.
Yeah.
So who did you go to for your diagnosis? Was it a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or who?
Yeah, it was just an organization in Bristol in England that were doing dyslexia. It was a neurodiversity kind of. So I went there and had I had two appointments, and I had once they did the dyslexia, and then there was they thought there was kind of because we know with dyslexia that sometimes it's not just dyslexia; it could be dyscalculia, it could be ADHD. It could branch out into, not for everyone, but there are traits that there could be something else.
Comorbidities.
Yes. So they weren't too sure about the ADHD, but after being there for going for a couple of appointments and the tests they had, they said they come out with dyslexia and ADHD, very strong, severe dyslexia. And I guess I just heard dyslexia, and it's only been probably the last year that I've really kind of started to kind of understand ADHD by speaking to people, because I always kind of thought, okay, dyslexia, let's learn about that, rather than trying to learn about dyslexia and ADHD at the same time.
Were you prescribed any medication or any
There was
treatment?
no, I wasn't. There was talk of it, but personally for me, I haven't gone down that route, so I haven't got any experiences of that.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you're managing it and it's not affecting your life in any way, then I think your ADHD is probably the thing that keeps driving you forward. It gives you that energy and that hyper focus,
Yes,
that you need when you are doing your photography.
yes, yeah. I mean, the hyper focus can be fantastic when I'm working on a project, or I'm doing businesses or anything else, and it can be bad, not bad, but it can be damaging, I guess, in some other aspects that you can forget appointments or anything else that's kind of going on around you. So, but the hyper focus. I mean, I don't know if anyone else can share what that's happened to them, but for me, I can work on a project, and all I think about is that one project, nothing else. I'm thinking it needs to be this, it needs to be that, and it's so I could be on it for
consuming.
hours and forget about eating and drinking and just it's like you're just tuned into the kind of the matrix side of it, and you just don't want to. You can't kind of move.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need somebody to say, "Oi, hello, come on, come and eat now, come to bed now."
Yeah. I almost and this is where I can see kind of relationships can struggle and conversations and stuff, because when I'm in a kind of a hyper focused state, or I'm working on something, it's incredible. My partner's incredibly understanding in the sense that it's almost like, when you kind of tell a child, 10 minutes before bed, and then they got that kind of wind down time. For me, it's kind of, okay, 20 minutes we're doing this. And in my head, I can kind of work that out. I'm thinking, okay, so I've now got a bit of a time limit of working on something. And then that kind of brings me out of that kind of state. So that helps. Not every time, sometimes you just need to down tools and go. I'm not saying you always get that, but sometimes that's really kind of helped. And what it also has helped is that when I'm going into kind of a mode where I'm kind of coming down and I'm finishing what I'm doing, when I go away, I'm not necessarily thinking about that. If I'm stopped abruptly and down tools or something, whatever I'm going off to do, all I'm still thinking about is that.
Coming back.
Yeah.
So as we end off, Darren, what advice would you have for any parents who possibly are watching? We're very blessed to have parents and teachers, but maybe from a parent's point of view, what advice would you give to them if their child is struggling with they don't know what it is, they don't know that it is dyslexia, but they could be struggling? What sort of, I suppose, strategies or advice would you give?
I guess, and I've said this before, it's really a case of just starting that conversation, because a lot of the times we don't, as parents, we don't have all the answers, for this. And again, if you're speaking to your child, it could be they don't really know what's going on as well. So it's almost, I'm always a big believer of parents, if they feel that element. There are some incredible Facebook groups, and there's incredible people that you can kind of reach out to get some kind of, communities to get kind of some information. But it's almost, not being initially too worried about this, but we, if you go to a school and they say, well, actually, we think your child is dyslexic, then you think, oh my goodness, this is going to be, the end of the world. But there are, it's just having those conversations and just kind of building on it gradually, and kind of learning and understanding together, and reaching out to organizations, and other parents and other communities. And I guess a lot of it is kind of self-educated in that aspect, but also taking the child along with you for the journey. I hope that kind of helps, but it's not as soon as you've got the answer, that's the kind of the fix. This is
it doesn't just end there.
This is a long-term journey.
You mentioned the International Dyslexia Association. Is that the IDA?
So yeah, the IDA. So they're I'm a global partner for the IDA, and they're right. The reason I say that is because, again, they do help. They look at dyslexia on an international, on a global scale, and they're a great organization to to get involved with, because then they'll be able to kind of signpost you to someone within your country. And then it kind of, if you think of it as a global scale, and then they break it down to a country and then district, and then so they're a great organization to.
I'd love to know what the stats are at the moment for dyslexia. I don't know if you have those. But I was looking at just learning barriers or learning disabilities in general. It's about 1 in 5
they
children. But
so on a, if you look at neurodiversity as a whole, because I just did some work with HSBC, and this we worked out on a neurodiverse level on a global scale. It's 1 in 7 that 1 in 7 people have. There's a neurodiverse condition globally. So if you then break that down, you think of neurodiversity as a whole. Dyslexia, dyscalculia, it's that we're talking huge numbers of people. And again with dyslexia as well. So I think again, if we say 1 in 5 with dyslexia, but then that's we're taking the number of people that actually know that they have dyslexia. So, and if they did the statistics, 20 years ago, it would have been a lot lower. You think how many more people are kind of understanding dyslexia? 36 for me. So I guess it's growing all the time.
So we've put your website up there. Where else can people sort of learn more about your Neurodiversity Stories?
Yeah, so we run so every Friday we run a thing I created a thing called Neurodiversity Stories, where we have guests come on similar to this. We just have a conversation, and people just share their kind of experiences around neurodiversity. It could be autism, could be dyslexia, could be anything around kind of the neurodiverse element. We stream that out on LinkedIn Live and Facebook and YouTube as well. But all the details, if you have a look at the website, you'll be able to find Neurodiversity Stories on there.
Yeah.
And
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. You've been such a gracious guest. I love meeting new people and finding like-minded people. Even if we are across the world from each other, well, as they say, across the pond. It's like you're just next door. So it's been so lovely chatting to you, and it feels like we're mates. It's been lovely. Thank you so much. We'll see you on Clubhouse hopefully soon.
Definitely. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks everybody, and thanks for watching. Next Wednesday is the Q&A. Following on from this session, we're going to just unpack ADHD a little bit more, chatting about dyslexia and ADHD Wednesday 8 p.m. So tune in there. But other than that, thanks again for watching, and stay safe. Good evening.